Hello, everyone. Welcome to the committee of the whole meeting for January 24th, 2023. It's now 9:30. I'd like to thank everybody for being here early. There's more people in the audience than we've seen for a long time. So thanks for joining us in person. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 9:30. Councillors, you have the agenda in front of you. I'd like to request, is there any additions to the agenda? Mayor Ireland?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I do have a walk-on item that I would like to add potentially as new business item 7.3, a request for decision with respect to tourism-based communities costs and fiscal capacity report. It's been provided to councillors in paper form. This morning didn't arrive in time to make the agenda, but in consultation with our CAO, it's important that we move this matter forward. So requested it be added to today's agenda.
Okay, we'll add item 7.3, titled it Tourism-Based Communities Costs and Fiscal Capacity Report. And Mr. Given, will this be attached to the next regular council meeting agenda?
Yes, Deputy Mayor Wilson, apologies again to council for not getting in with the overall package, but we will attach it to the minutes of this meeting. And I believe Emma has actually already distributed it to our regular council package distribution list, which would include the media, so they have a copy of the report as well.
Great, thank you. So item 7.3 will be added. Any additional items to the agenda? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I'm not sure where I should add this, potentially the 9.1A, but I would like to request permission to register for an elected official education program course. Thank you.
Great, thank you. That would be item 9.2. Any further items? If not, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended, or to amend the agenda? Councillor Melnick. Thank you for the motion. All in favor? There are none opposed. And may I have another motion to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Keller MP. All in favor? There are none opposed. That carries. We're on to item 4. That's just for information. We have the committee of the whole minutes in front of us. Is there any business arising from the minutes of January 11th? Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 5.1. So sorry, item 5, delegations. We first have Jasper Chamber of Commerce here. The topic is our CMP musical ride, and Mrs. Patty Pavlov has brought Mr. Bedesi, and I'm assuming Mr. Pavlov. Okay, we have not met. Nice to meet you. And so I'll hand it over to Patty at this point.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I will be turning it over directly to Sergeant Bedesi.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and councillors, fellow MG employees, and fellow Jasperites. Thank you for this opportunity. I know it's January 24th. It's not too late, in my opinion, to wish you all a happy new year and all the best for this wonderful 2023 projection. Let's talk about the musical ride. This, prior to getting into the presentation, it's a goal that started about just over a year ago, and a vision when we found out that the musical ride was going to be touring in Western Canada. So the application was submitted with interest for Jasper, and here we are. A little bit of background regarding the ride. The ride began performing in the United States and overseas in 1930. The ride made its first trip to England to perform at the Wembley exhibition. In London in 1934, the ride performed for the first time in the United States with Division M in New York City and E Division in Portland, Oregon. By this time, the ride had become an established attraction, and in 1939, new stables were built in Ottawa. A one-story brick veneer structure designed by local architect W.C. Sylvester. The horses had previously been lodged in Lansdowne Park and then in a wooden building. In 1939, the ride was an enormous success at the World Fair in New York. However, any plans for the future was shelved when the Second World War broke out. There would be no further performances until 1948. 1953, the musical ride returned to England for the first time since 1930 to perform at the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. 1961, the RCMP obtained ministerial authority to establish a permanent musical ride in Ottawa to perform annually in Canada and abroad. 1962, the final ride performed by the musical ride troupe based in Regina. Since then, the ride has been based exclusively in Ottawa. 1969 to 1988, on a tour of the United Kingdom, the ride performed in Wales for the first time. Also, the ride escorted the Queen, the late Queen, from Windsor Castle to the showgrounds. This was the first time any troop other than the Household Cavalry had been permitted this escort. The musical ride was held for the first time in Asia at Expo 70 in Osaka, Japan. The ride made successful tours of continental Europe. The ride toured in Ireland and the United Kingdom to participate in the Queen's Silver Jubilee celebrations. The ride made successful tours of continental Europe. Today, the RCMP musical ride consists of 32 riders plus the member in charge. It executes a variety of cavalry drills choreographed to music. The ride tours throughout Canada and internationally between May and October, performing at approximately 40 venues each year. The present stables in Ottawa were built in 1993. The original stables built in 1939 now house the Visitors Center. Our vision, we have a commitment from the musical ride for June of 2023, with an arrival on June 18th, where the horses would be established, settled, and kit would be arranged. On June 19th, initially, there was one performance promised. However, I was able to convince the coordinator to have two performances, one of which potentially be in the morning and dedicated to schools in the community and surrounding communities. The departure morning of June 20th, 2023. Location, and this is one of the reasons why we're here. We need a stable location where we can house the horses. We've done research and cost analysis. We've risk assessed to meet the RCMP requirements. We've, myself, Ms. Pavlov, Mr. Pavlov have formed a local committee of sorts to address some of the different components of coordinating the ride. The logistics lead is retired Constable Steve Pavlov. He's an experienced rider and a current guide for local stables. He's very familiar with the protocols from the RCMP point of view as per the musical ride, has numerous contacts in the horse industry, and has undertaken extensive conversations with suppliers and partners to succeed with minimal impact. Both the stabling area, performance venues have been examined for feasibility and are both cost effective and logically sound for this purposes. They include easy access to the public and students to visit and learn, easy access to activities including rideabouts in town, including seniors residents. Both areas meet RCMP standards, and other communities have successfully held this event within their current situations. This year, the ride will visit communities such as Cranberry. Sponsorship has been explored with eager response from corporate sponsors to be involved both with monetary and gift in kind to enable the logistics to be both cost effective and absolutely sound. Today's presentation hinges on the release of sponsorship letters. Primary research and conversations have been conducted today by myself, Pavlov, Ms. Pavlov, and Mark Dewar, who is the retired Staff Sergeant Major with RCMP, and he's also the right coordinator based in Ottawa. The conversations include Parks Canada, Mr. Christopher Reid, the Community Development Director, Indigenous Communities, Trans Mountain Expansion Project, CN Tourism Jasper, the municipality of Jasper, including the mayor and individual members of council, Jasper Yellowhead Museum and Archives, Jasper Riding Stables, Parkland Equestrian Center, Grand Prairie Stampede Association, and the Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce. What is our ask? The ask is the use of the hockey arena for stabling of RCMP forces and visitation by the public for approximately 6 days from the 16th of June to the 21st. Public visitation June 18 to 19 from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. There is a bit of a display, a photo of what potentially a hockey arena would look like, the house with very minimum impact. This includes 2 8-hour days for setup and 2 8-hour days for takedown. Estimated time frame. Approximately 6 Muni personnel to assist with construction and tear down of approximately 30 stalls as pictured. And the stalls in this case, I'll turn it over to Mr. Pavlov shortly, and he can describe the stall components. It's very minimal at best. Apart from the personnel being used to spreading of wood shavings, placement of rubber mats, and folding tables as supplied by the Muni and the removal upon completion. I've also since spoken to Mr. Alan Fairwood, Parks Canada, and he's on site to allocate personnel and resources to assist in this project. Full day use of Centennial Park between the sports field and ball diamonds on the 19th of June for performance purposes. Plan is for 1 performance in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. The location has been discussed, research. It meets the measured dimensions for the ride and identified with the assistance of Mr. Reid with the least engineered component of Centennial Park. Delivery and pickup of sufficient traffic stanchions to provide safety barrier between the audience and performance. Street sweepers to remove any horse waste from roadways where they might travel, and small mobile crew to access places where sweeper cannot reach. We believe that Muni has a smaller sweeper that can be utilized in the removal of shavings from the arena during takedown. No dirt is being used in the arena, only dust-free wood shavings to the depth of 12 inches. And that's not throughout the arena, that's at the stable areas. During the stabling process, ride members responsible for cleanliness of stall area and removal of waste to have been supplied by the committee. Parking for 4 75-foot semi-tractor trailers units, which travels with the team. They have to be, part of the requirement is they have to be stationed near and have access to power. We anticipate the parking lot across from the street out of the museum grounds. These asks are based on no volunteer input. Our intention is to obtain as many volunteers to augment, assist, or reduce input by Muni staff and equipment where possible. Once approval in principle is obtained, call for volunteers can begin, same as letters of sponsorship. Card costs as feed and wood shaving, building materials, For example, 2x6 timbers are being budgeted for and paid by the organizing committee through sponsorship. A contingency budget is also being sought through sponsorship for any repairs that may have to be made where we hope would be a shared responsibility between the municipality and the organizing committee. Naturally, as a result of that task, the municipality will be recognized as a full partner in the endeavor. That's it for the ask. The timelines that we have is, if permission is granted, we want to establish formal committee to coordinate with logistics, sponsorships, and community. Confirm infrastructure needs in order. Media release. Confirm the sponsorship, partnership, and stakeholder involvements. And start the recruitment of volunteers as designated by permits to utilize the arena in Centennial Park. Why, and the summary of what we're discussing. Historically significant milestone year for Jasper in our country, and then the Jasper National Park. The RCMP is celebrating a significant milestone this year for 150 years. 50 years since last performance in Jasper. This was in 1973-74, confirmed by the museum. And we believe it was in direct correlation with the opening of the current RCMP detachment. The educational opportunities, community engagement activities, the visitation, the write-abouts, reconciliation activities with Indigenous groups. You will have some letters of support as part of your presentation package. Environmentally sound with efficient and effective placement and removal. Spirited event for all ages. Memorable experience for visitors. And the sponsorship to be finalized with sufficient amounts to cover related costs for required needs, such as stapling infrastructure. That, in a nutshell, is the presentation on my behalf. I'm open to questions. I'll turn over to Mr. Pavlov for any of the technical questions where
Thank you very much, Sergeant Badesi. Sounds pretty exciting. Councillors, questions? Councillor Demona.
I just have a question on the performance area. Ms. Acorn, if you could bring the slide back to Centennial Park. Perfect, thank you. Where exactly would the performance area be considered in Centennial Park?
We don't intend on using playfield. We've discovered that there's just enough room between the sports field and the ball diamond. And that's where we plan on.
Right, in all things, I know everybody's been doing this for a long time, but sprinkler heads and gopher holes, that's all.
That has been taken into account. I've spoken to a former employee of the municipality who stated that there's covers available for sprinkler heads. Gopher holes can be filled, although there's not many.
Well, it's good. I think this is a great an opportunity for the community, and I was just curious. You know, I think that's the only question that I had on this. This is the second time that I've had this in front of me, so it's.
The other positive,
sorry, go ahead.
if I may, is that for spectators, that hillside gives them a good vantage point, also keeps them back. Yeah, as I was saying, the vantage point is perfect. They can stand up on the other side and look down onto the performance area. At the same time, that's where the stanchions and barriers come in to keep the crowd back. And yeah, it's the most appropriate place.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councillor Callahan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I have a question for the stapling of the horses in the arena. Will somebody be there 24 hours with them?
Yes, they do not leave the horses. Somebody would be put on picket duty all night with the horses. They're not left alone. Whatever.
In addition, the requirements are. In addition, addition, the requirements are from the RCMP standpoint to police officers dedicated around the clock and given the horses as needed.
Thank you.
Separate.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This might be a question for administration. I know that when the rodeo moved outside, when the arena was redone, it looks like this is different. Wood chips, would there still be the same amount of cleanup or the dust getting into the rafters?
I can answer to that. It's not as labor intensive. I was with the rodeo committee for 20 years. I know all the headaches, what to avoid. What we intend on using is dust-free wood shavings to a depth of 1 foot. The wood shavings do not go entirely in the arena, only 25 feet from the boards and up. Okay, easier to clean up. At the same time, as the horses are using the wood shavings, the members with the horses responsible for keeping their small area clean. So we'll be providing a waste bin that the member scoops up the waste, puts it in the wheelbarrow, takes it out, they bin. And then there will be fresh shavings for them to resupply. And that's why I feel that the cleanup is not going to be like dirt. We don't intend on putting any dirt in. And the other thing that I want to avoid is any machinery to go into the arena as well. Because lift trucks, that sort of thing, can drop oil on the floor. I've had that experience with the rodeo. So I'm well aware of what is required in the arena to do the minimal amount of respiration. Okay.
Councillor Keller.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, and through you to Mr. Gibbon. As Councillor Hall indicated before that we had issues when the rodeo was in. One of the issues that was identified at that time was health and safety, and that we had some staff that were allergic to horses would not be covered for those members of staff that were allergic to horses that were in the area.
Deputy Mayor Wilson for Councillor Keller. First, Director Reed has been in the most close contact and knows the team there. I think from an administrative perspective, there's probably a number of other issues like what you just raised that we may not have considered. And that's why we would like to have an opportunity to come back to council with a more fully formed recommendation. And so Director Reed, I think, has probably a number of other comments. Another thing that council will be aware of is the activity center renovation project, and administration wants to make sure that we're able to we'd have to make sure that there's an opportunity to have these two, the event and the renovation project, work well together. And I know Director Reed's done some preliminary work on that, but that's the type of thing that we'd like to reflect back to you in a more detailed report. And allergies is something else that we could survey our staff about as we consider that too.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbon.
Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, through you to the delegation. Firstly, thank you very much for the report. I will state for the benefit of other councillors that Director Reed and I met with Mrs. Pavlov and Sergeant Bedesi sometime in the last month or so, and went through a number of these points. And I appreciate how the report that's presented today directly addresses some of the concerns that we raised at that time. And I am particularly appreciative of the two photographs that depict what it is that you were trying to explain, and that I maybe didn't picture well, but I can picture it now because I have a picture to look at. And that does make a difference. There are a couple of concerns that I still have, but they are probably more administrative concerns. So I am prepared to say now that I will support the ask in principle, but subject to ensuring that we can adequately address any concerns that administration may have. So Councillor Keller has just mentioned one that I had not thought of, but if we can address that, that is fine. So my biggest concern right now, I believe, I mean, you've addressed the issue of damage to built facilities, and from what I understand of the depiction of how the event would use Centennial Park, I presume there's a way to get the horses in there without tromping over the soccer field. It looks to me that the intended performance area is right where the horseshoe pitch is, so I presume that efforts will be made to prevent horses stumbling over that. Maybe throwing their own shoes. What does concern me though is the offsite. I thought I heard you say, Dr. Daisy, that part of the ask was for municipal staff to construct the fencing inside the arena, and I thought I heard you say 6 or 8 employees for 2 days, and I wonder whether administration has that staff capacity at that time where we would find those staff and take them from other municipal duties. So I leave that to administration, but it's a concern that I would have, and I wonder whether you consider the role of volunteers if it's hammering nails to put it.
That number is just a number if I had no volunteers. I'm hoping to augment that with volunteers. Now that Sergeant Daisy has advised me that Parks Canada is on board, there's personnel we can use from there. The only thing I would like somebody from the community, because of the work being done in there, to supervise it correctly, that we're doing things correctly. So we don't necessarily need 6, and we can get away with 2.
But I appreciate that response, and supervision is something that we would probably be interested in any event, but I leave it to staff or administration to confirm for council's benefit whether there will be negative impacts on our own capacity to perform the work that staff are expected to perform as we ramp up for a busy summer season. But thank you for that.
I'm interested in just with the logistics. Does the musical ride travel with their own stalls?
No, they don't, and that's the biggest headache. I've researched that as in the event we weren't in a hockey arena. There's only one company in Alberta that provides portable stalls. And the minimum they will rent me is 160 stalls, and I only need 30.
Okay.
So I've gone down that road.
Yeah. So are you asking for assistance with stalls as well, or?
Just you could take a look at the photograph of how it's set up.
Yeah.
You could go to that photograph. The way the stalls are created is by using 2x6 lumber. The glass does not have to come out of the hockey boards. I've been into the arena and took a look. The way that it's constructed is there's 2 pieces of puck board together, the glass in between. What I've been told by Ottawa and other hockey arenas that they've used, just a matter of putting the 2x6 on top of the puck board and using the existing holes to screw the 2x6 down onto the puck. And then what they do is we would do it for them. It's the 2x6x12, which defines every stall, is just screwed into the 2x6, just to show the horse, this is your area. It's not like it's going to be a really permanent structure. And then what they also use that 2x6 for is to attach some sort of a fastening system to tie the horse to the 2x6.
Great, yeah, thank you. I didn't look closely at the pictures. I appreciate that.
One step further, on the floor itself, before you put the wood shavings down, you put about 2 feet of plastic all the way down along the boards with duct tape, so that the wood shavings do not go under. So it's a lot easier than when we used to do the rodeo. I mean, we used to do the same thing. We used to tape the boards, prevent the dirt going underneath. But we are not using any dirt, which will keep the dust and the whole thing a lot simpler.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, through you to the delegation. Couple of questions. Any thought given to using the fencing from the Heritage Rodeo, or has that all been disposed of?
It's all been sold to Rural Rodeo.
And just to follow up on Mayor Ireland's question about the ask for municipal staff and so on, would what's missing for me in this presentation is the overall cost of what has to get covered by sponsorship, gift in kind, volunteers, I guess, call it fundraising opportunities for volunteer groups who could set up around the perimeter, make it a much more extensive community event to celebrate. So in the municipal development of the request for decision, I think those are a number of things that we would probably be a little bit more comfortable. I would be more comfortable knowing those details. And I think the last point, I'll let you respond in the last point.
Excuse me, thank you, Steve. That was where I come into the picture. Those who know me know that I have a great deal of experience with raising money for sponsorship. I have spoken to many organizations, as has Sergeant Badaisy, who are more than willing at this time to become major partners. And that's not just gift in kind, where you have volunteers or you have people with equipment, that type of thing. This is cash in hand. I've been working with Tourism Jasper, been working with Trans Mountain, with ATCO, to arrange for their stage so that we have a proper dignitary stand. Working with Pursuit, the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge. So there is money that is waiting to be tapped into, and it is eagerly being offered. The only thing, again, that we have been waiting for is the approval from council to proceed before we get down to the paperwork, the brass tacks. In terms of cost, dependent again, if the arena lands up being the stabling situation, then we would make sure that we have included a contingency fund, as has been mentioned, to make sure that anything that does not come out exactly the way as it went in will be repaired. And I have broadly budgeted $20,000 in sponsorship, confident that I will have that without any problem. And again, waiting for council approval in order to proceed. Does that help, Mr. Melnick?
It does, and the other contingency, hopefully within that, or maybe an additional amount that I would like to see identified is, should there be damage to the field, what provision is there? Because we're using two municipal assets going into the start of the summer. One will be potentially under construction, but the other one is a very popular area during the summertime. So I just want to ensure that you know, enthusiastically going in, but we're covering all of our bases to recover should something go sideways.
Yes, I can assure you that we have looked at every angle from every possible direction of things that could go wrong. Like again, because of the newer system and the newer approach to the venue and to the stabling situation, things going wrong are very limited, but not. You can't ever say never. So having said that, that $20,000 would include contingency fund for both the venue and the stabling area, because being able to use the arena significantly reduces the costs that would be involved with trying to rent box stalls, as Mr. Pavlov has indicated. So a direct budget on paper, digital numbers, adding up to the budget is also something that would be our first task. Once we realize that we do have the backing and the approval of the municipality. But at this time, we have estimated $20,000, which we feel will cover all costs and include a contingency.
So then again, I guess my last question is, there is a commitment by a variety of individuals to sponsor the event. The event is put on by the RCMP. There's two opportunities there. One will be a shortfall and one will be a windfall. I'll assume there'll be a windfall. What happens to the funds after that?
I can tell you between Steve and I, and Sergeant Badaisy, you may want to weigh in on this as well, but we have looked at the many partnerships over the years and the assistance that the local Royal Canadian Legion gives to veterans of all types, including the RCMP. And should there be a windfall, that money would be then given to them to help with various projects that they have, including mental health supports and other things that they are involved with veterans.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
You know, lots of questions to carry on asking, but I think from what I heard from Mr. Given was that administration was going to work with the delegation and return back to council with a report. House, you know, I'm assuming you want a decision as quick as possible. Administration, when do you foresee coming back? I know there's a recommendation here that it comes back next week. Do you need more time than that? And yeah, I guess it's.
Deputy Mayor Wilson, on behalf of the rest of administration, the proposed motion in front of you does reflect the amount of time we think we can adequately return the information that is the council way forward. So it wouldn't be till February 7th, I believe, is the next council meeting.
The recommendation says next regular council meeting, which is 2 weeks, or because there is not one next week. I understand. Okay. And then we can, does council feel comfortable coming back to us at a council meeting rather than a committee of the whole meeting? Seems like there's agreement. So I think we leave it with administration and the delegation to work out the fine details, and then we'll be back in front of us in 2 weeks. We need a motion, yes. Councillor Arnold, you have a motion?
I would make the motion that administration, the committee directs administration to return to us at the next council meeting with the information we need. I'm looking at Mayor Ireland.
If I might, just by way of friendly amendment, amend the motion to read that committee received the presentation by the Jasper Chamber of Commerce for information and second part.
The
Councillor
motion
Hall.
that was written for us.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I would make that motion.
If I may speak to the motion,
Please.
thank you. I will support the motion. One piece of information that occurred to me, and I trust will be in the administrative report or request for decision that we received on February 7th. is I have proceeded on the assumption that we won't be required to take ice out of the arena to accommodate this and then put ice back in. That the arena would otherwise have been dry and useful. But if I'm wrong in that assumption, that's a tremendous cost, and I would like to know that we've looked at that. Because I don't know what the summer use schedule is for potentially having ice in the arena in June. But apart from that, that's my only concern, and that can be addressed at a later time.
Thank you for that. There's no further questions. I'll call the question. All in favor? There are none opposed. The motion carries. Thank you very much for attending, and yeah, look forward to seeing you guys in a couple weeks. Next up, we have a presentation by Community Future, so agenda item 5.2. We have Nancy Robbins here, and pass the mic over to her.
Everybody, mic on?
No.
Oh, it's green. Hi, I'm Nancy Robbins, Community Futures West Yellowhead. I'm presenting to you today the results of our triage business and expansion study, which we partnered with the municipality on in the fall of 2022. This was a regional project involving the municipal district of Greenview, town of Hinton, town of Edson, and community futures, as well as municipality. Sorry, Emma. And as well as having community reports, we have a regional report as well, which was presented to our board last week. So to talk briefly about the methodology, this was a random survey of the business community. It was mostly small businesses with very few large properties that were identified. And we do this kind of work all the time at Community Futures. We do business retention and expansion activities. And it was really nice for us to finally have some solid data done professionally by a consultant for us to understand where our business communities are heading coming out of the pandemic and what the next 18 months to 24 months is going to look like. So when we look at our business community, 95% of our community is locally owned and operated, with 5% actually being externally owned and operated, which was a surprise. But then I realized we do quite a number of businesses that actually the business owners live elsewhere. If you look at years operating in Jasper, and I really want to draw your attention to this one, because in economic development, when we see a really aging business community, it's a bit of a red flag. This is your municipal tax base as well. And so you can see that we have 58% that are more than 10 years and 13% that are 6 to 10 years. So we have quite an aging business community. Our goal is to really focus on succession planning and what succession planning looks like over the next 18 months. We want to make sure that people that are phasing out of their businesses sell those businesses and not walk away from them. Also draw your attention to the 2% that is less than 1 year. That's a big flag for us regionally, as Jasper had the lowest number of startups. And so it really gives us some idea of community futures that we need to really focus on helping people start up some businesses, so we can see that aging of the business community even out a little bit. No surprise when we look at owning or renting that the majority of business owners in Jasper are renting. It was the highest number in the region that rent their business space. And of particular attention is paying attention to those leases that expire in less than a year, and those leases that are right now month to month. That gives us an idea that those businesses are a little unstable. We're hoping to follow up with those businesses to see if we can help, and also do some work regionally on some education on understanding lease agreements, how you rent, how to negotiate, those kinds of things. In terms of business performance, we probably have the most positive business community in the region, highest in terms of the attitude moving forward over the next 24 months. Business owners are very positive in terms of their growth in coming out of the pandemic. We see what we want to see at this stage is remain the same or increase, and we're seeing that in Jasper. And so when we look at business performance in terms of staff revenue and attitudes, we see that if you look at it, it's scored at plus 5.2, indicating there's an increased trend in the business performance in the community. It is the highest in the region overall, and we're performing well in terms of revenue and attitude towards looking towards the future. The Net Promoter Score is an interesting conversation. What this really does is it looks at the question of, would a business owner recommend Jasper as a place to start business? And so I want to draw your attention to the Net Promoter Score, where the question was asked, I would recommend Jasper to another business looking to expand or relocate. What we see here, we have 3 categories of business owners. We have promoters, who are people that are actively promoting the community. We have people that are passive, that really are ambivalent towards whether or not Jasper is a good place to run a business. And we have people that are detractors, that are really going to be negative about their experience. The good news is that we're in the positive. We're +2. So let's be optimistic that we're not in the negative. The bad news is we're the lowest in the region. We're seeing that in terms of the West Yellowhead, our Jasper businesses are not really promoting our community as well as we want them to. And as we get into the key performance indicators, I think you'll see the reasons why. But as a comparison for this number, the region's at 16, Edson's at 29, Grand Cache is at 28, and Hinton's at 7. So we have a lot of work to do in this area. So let's look at it as an opportunity. Key performance indicators really are looking at satisfaction. Performance indicator, 90% are satisfied with the municipality in terms to own and operate a business. Again, really high, really positive, but again, it's the lowest in the region where we have as high as 93% in Edson and 92% for the region. And when we look at the satisfaction levels, it's really when we get to see into the data of why this is occurring. When asked on particular indicators as to why the satisfaction, how satisfied you are with the business, Jasper was probably the only community where there was a lot of below 50%. The other communities in the region scored pretty well in terms of their satisfaction, but you can see that for we have the basics. We have a good medical system, we have good road network, good cell service, good internet. So we do have the basic infrastructure here for business, but we need to put a little bit of work on some other indicators. Derived importance and priority matrix is really the nuts and bolts of this data that you're going to have. It's where the consultant takes every single thing that they've asked of the business community, waves their magic wand in some mathematical formula that I really do not understand, and gives us the priority of what we need to focus on. And so here is where we see the nuts and bolts of what we need to do over the next 24 months. And it's no surprise in Jasper that the availability of adequate housing is number one. It's a problem that has existed for a long time in this community, but I believe there is some plans by the municipality. I've read that you're having a housing manager come, and we're going to really start parks, and the muni are really focusing on this issue. So I believe I got to have hope that this is going to get better for the future. The development of building permit process is not really something Community Futures would make a comment on, but and same with municipal property taxes. But I've advised all municipalities that when I went to research into this one a little bit more, I couldn't find on anyone's website what their municipal property taxes were or any kind of breakdown on current. Unless you're following the budget in your community, you really don't know what the tax rate is. And same with the development process. It's not really, when you go to look at it from Parks Canada, I'm a smart woman and it was a hard read. So I give the advice to both parks. I'm meeting with parks next week to discuss this further on understanding that in our communities, a grade 5 reading level is what most people your communities operating at in our region. And so we need to simplify the process. I'm not saying we need to change it. We just need to communicate it better. So that data that you have, really, I asked the business, what would you say about this at council? And they said, well, I just want to know where my dollar goes. For every dollar in property tax, tell them where it goes, break it down. Where does 20 cents go? It goes here. Where does 50 cents go? It goes here. And have that comparison. If Jasper taxes are cheaper than Banff, tell us that. Do a social media campaign. Just give us the information. Availability of skilled labor is the most common one in the region. It is the one we are going to probably focus on. It's a little bit of a stretch for us at Community Futures, but we realize it needs to be done. And this one in combination with the availability of post-secondary programming, which is priority number 7. And I put a lot of thought into this and wasn't really sure where this was coming from. And then I realized in the terms of what we do after we finish high school, there's a range in our education levels. We have as high as university and as low as people trying to understand Excel. And I think the Jasper Employment Education Center, to give them a shout out, they had a great example over the past week of they had a small AA course, and that small AA course was full and a waiting list. And now they're going to bring back a second course and do the next level. And that was available for businesses to access the Canada Alberta Job Grant. And I think that's what businesses are looking for. I think they're looking for those micro credentials. If I can put on a lobbying hat, any opportunity that you have to go to AUMA, RMA, please realize that we have a big gap in our post-secondary in the West Yellowhead. We're not getting the attention that we need. And so those micro credentials are not being accessed for our businesses. And so we're hoping to have some conversations. We've talked to various chambers and various organizations about how we can go about doing that in the next year. Not surprisingly as well in Jasper, the affordability of commercial space and the availability of commercial space, it was an issue. Any other community, I would start talking about co-working spaces and incubators and how we can get our businesses out to storefronts. It's a conversation I'm hoping to explore, kick the tires a little bit with Parks Canada, because you never know. I'm an optimist. I try to think that maybe this is something we can do in Jasper. But again, it's our hope to really sit down and talk to some realtors and find out what exactly it is that the businesses are dealing with right now in terms of space. Is it the space is too expensive? Is it that it's not conducive to their needs? Are they looking for other things? So lots of opportunities in this priority matrix moving forward. In terms of our business health and community, I'm just going to leave you with the last slide. National average in terms of business health is 753. Municipality of Jasper is at 740. We have a lot of work to do in Jasper. I'm looking forward to the challenge coming out of the pandemic. I really believe that we have a great solid business community and we can really work at bringing these indicators up and the satisfaction up, and look forward to partnering with the community on doing just that. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. A lot of great information in there. And before I open it up to councillors, I did want to point out the top of the priority matrix is availability of adequate housing, and second one on there is development building permit process. And I'm happy that those are two of our strategic priorities on from last year's strategic plan, and I think we are making some progress on both of those items, and of course a lot more work to do, but it's nice to have that show up there as one of our things we need to be working on. Well, okay, great, because we've seen that and we are making steps to work towards that. Yeah, that's great. Councillors?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, through you to Ms. Rollins. Thank you for the report. My recollection is that we assisted in the funding, so I'm happy to see the results. Much appreciated. Just an observation, I suppose. I don't expect that you can speak for the consultant Deloitte, but in your closing comments, you spoke a phrase in any other community, recognizing that Jasper is inherently different. And this is one of our challenges, I think, whenever we do comparative analysis. And I'm not sure whether it would be possible for, in this case, Deloitte to look at the differences. If I look ahead in our agenda, I invite you to take a look at the report that is going to be tabled here shortly. Some of the information that you referenced that is lacking is in that report comparisons with 33 other municipalities across the province, but the intent of that comparison is to draw the distinction between those other communities and, in our case, Jasper, but also down in Canmore. And I say that because the challenges that we face and that business face is doing business in a national park environment, in a community with a fixed boundary, with a commercial cap, which we have achieved, and all of that translates to rental costs and things that affect businesses. And yet they expect that it's impossible for the consultant to configure survey questions that apply equally in Edson, Hinton, Jasper, and Grand Cache. So I think with recognition that we are met with different challenges, the priority matrix is, of course, going to be different in Jasper, and we have different challenges. But this is great to bring that all out. I don't expect that we should compare ourselves necessarily always with just bound and Canmore. Let's see what we're doing regionally, and this is good work, but it also points to the fact that perhaps we need to educate our own population, business sector in particular, about the challenges of, but also the advantages and the opportunities of living and working in a national park environment where we don't have control of land use planning and development yet, and other things that truly impact the business sector. So I think this is great material. It will take lots of thought to see how we can move forward with this, but as Deputy Mayor Wilson said, the issues that rank first here also rank first in our strategic priorities. So that in fact is really good news. I thank you for bringing it forward. I will say that when you get an opportunity to look at the material that, as I said, is going to be tabled later in today's meeting, Jasper spends 32% of its budget on visitor-facing services and infrastructure, which is, I'm sure, entirely unlike Hinton Edson or Grand Cache. And so, yes, there should be a pie graph that shows where every dollar of your tax goes. I've seen it. I'm not sure where it is on the website, but we can certainly provide that, and you can circulate that to all who ask. But we do know, and we do indicate where tax dollars go. But surprisingly, 32% of our budget goes to visitor-facing services and infrastructure in an effort to recognize that we have to accommodate the visitor population, because that's what drives the economy. Again, thanks for the report, much appreciated.
Yeah, would you like to respond or? Yeah.
Yes, if I could.
Please.
I appreciate that Jasper is a unique community, and we did ask some questions about Parks Canada in the Jasper survey as well. They just didn't show up. They influence. I think that we need to realize that this has shown us that we have a very dissatisfied business community. And when it comes to operating a business, it's the basics that all of us have, no matter where we're located, that need to be addressed. And my concern is that we're going to start to have people walk away from their businesses because they are so unsatisfied at operating a business in Jasper. And I realize that it's apples and oranges compared to Edson, but I think we have nowhere to go but up. And I think I would like to see some small things. For example, I know you're heading into strategic planning, and I challenge you to where in your strategic plan do you discuss business? It's not mentioned. I read your strategic plan, and when you compare websites between Jasper, Hinton, Edson, Grand Cache, there's no business tab for Jasper. There's no business information. We know that 95% of our entrepreneurs are going to come from our community. So let's spend some time and make our community more entrepreneurial. It gives us so many things that it builds a community. And I would like to see people coming out of the pandemic in Jasper being happier, running a business in Jasper. And I appreciate all those comments, Mayor Ireland, I really do, but I think it's important for us to maybe look a little bit to the east and maybe learn a few lessons on how we deal with our businesses and how we can grow and be better.
Thank you. Councillor Demona.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Ms. Robbins. Again, I appreciate the information here and the work that's gone behind it. I've had the opportunity to get a lot of this information a couple of times. And one thing that I think I'm really grateful for, and I hope we have the opportunity again, is when you showed up to the adult community conversation. I think that was a really important and healthy discussion. And one of those things, one of the aspects of community conversations is bringing forward some of the gaps that people are facing in the community. And I had mentioned at one point that, there's concerns on council that sometimes if an issue is raised, it's one person representing one thing and they might have a minor issue. And I believe Mr. Reed had pointed out, well, Ms. Robbins represents a lot of people in the community and business and in the region. So when you were discussing those gaps, like on our website, and we also had a conversation on business application processes too, and the information that's available on our site, and just recently gone through those, found that even with the information we have, there's a lot of difficulty, and you made reference to the reading. And I'm not sure where I score on what grade level I'd be at for reading, but I did too find some things to be difficult. So I think that we had a discussion too on a community conversation based around business or tourism, or business and tourism related activity. And I know that the mayor addressed that maybe that's something that we should be looking at as well at one point. So I want to bring a little bit of that to our strat planning, and maybe have that discussion too on business being involved as part of that. So thank you for bringing all of that. I didn't want to over rehash some of the things you already said, but also bring to light some of the things that we discussed at community conversation. I did have a couple more comments, but I'm going on, so I don't want to get people to get tired of my voice too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, through you to Nancy. I wondered if you had referenced the opportunity to do some lobbying to RMA and Alberta municipalities regarding post-secondary education, and I wondered if you could elaborate on that, please.
Well, since Grand Prairie Regional College is now Northwest Polytechnic has moved out of the region, there's a gap in service. And so we're not seeing that there's access to post-secondary opportunities as easily as there are in other regions. And so it's been a noticeable gap all throughout the West Yellowhead, and notice in Jasper as well, that we don't have that service provided. So I guess the question is why we don't have that opportunity in the West Yellowhead that other regions have.
Thank you for that.
But is that not a reality of rural versus urban? Like the schools are, inevitably in higher populations, and I think it's not just our region, it's almost any rural region would suffer in that regard.
Well, you just made the argument great for everybody in rural Alberta. It's a valid question. Rural is, we need to ask why we're not being serviced rural communities, and this majority of our, good portion of our Alberta population is rural. So we should have access to opportunities, especially now that everything's done online. It should be easier for us to access and have support.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, hopefully I can jump in with a question. I'm just interested in like the businesses surveyed for the report. I know it's probably, leaning fairly tourism based, and of course you can argue that all of our businesses are tourism based, but were you able to, get in touch with construction sector or, CN or whomever?
It's a random selection. So, consultants do that magic thing, put everybody into categories and randomly select so that it's representative of all the industries. I think the majority that were randomly selected were most likely small businesses in our community. But if you look at the Jasper business license list, one of the things we did do in Jasper is that there's a tremendous amount of anyone that went through Jasper on the pipeline, for example, had to get a business license list. So we weeded out a lot of those that were from Spruce Grove or St. Albert. We took a lot of those out. So we really focused on people that had the TOE 1EO postal code, and those were the random sample was taken from that.
Nice, great, thank you. Councillors? Nothing further. Well, thank you very much for the presentation. Oh, go ahead.
I was just waiting
Yeah.
to see if there were.
Please.
But thank you. Again, through you, sir, to Ms. Robbins. I'm gonna get back to community conversations because I was really grateful for the amount of engagement that other representatives in the community had with you and the topics. And some of those gaps and things that were discussed, had a lot of questions for community outreach services and a lot of input, and we had a business owner there, maybe several. And so the coverage that conversation got was quite broad for our community, which I thought might be a healthy launch into something else. You had mentioned some of our gaps with communication and information on our own website. I'm wondering, from your experience in working with other councils and communities, is there an opportunity to bring our conversations model to other communities and use that, or are there other aspects of what they do for community involvement and community consultation that we could use to help enhance ours?
The chambers are active in each of the communities that I work, and so they provide, they're 4 different chambers, and they're all very, very different. But they also provide networking opportunities. You have NETMA here as well. Hinton has a business support network that meets monthly. And it's, there's various avenues. The adult, that was an interesting, unique opportunity. It was not what I expected that day that we were there. And it was a great opportunity for us between Community Futures and Community Outreach Services and the municipality outreach workers to realize that we had a lot more common than we thought, and for us to work together a little bit coming out of the pandemic, realizing that oftentimes we're working with the same clients. And that is common that we're seeing in the region. A lot of our clients are experiencing tremendous amount of burnout and stress. And so it was really great to have those conversations and make the parallels. We do have, like, everyone loves NETMA in the region. They always talk about doing it elsewhere. It's great. The chamber does a good job with that. You know, if it comes down to having a community conversation, there's a couple of issues, as in one, who would do the work that was action item out of that. That would be one concern of mine, and as Community Futures, we would love to help with that. But realize we work in 5 communities, so we can't be all Jasper. And also, you know, make sure it's accommodating to the very odd times that businesses work. We're a tourism community. It's very hard to get people working out of their business, and also to now more than ever before, business owners are working in a business. And we're seeing that as a big increase, as well as we have a labor shortage. So there's lots of different ways we can explore it, and I'm happy to have the conversation with the municipality of trying something. The worst thing you can do is fail. And then if you fail, you learn, be better next time. So yeah.
Thank you, I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Malik, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, and just picking up on your last comment, and I was looking at the full-time employees that were surveyed in the 62 businesses, and you were mentioning that owners may not have employees.
Yeah.
So when we see that 35% of the respondents say one employee, does that mean they're the employee?
Most likely, yes.
So basically a sole proprietorship of sorts.
Or they have a business downtown and they are the only ones working. Yeah, and that could be for a lot of reasons. It could be cash flow. It could be trying to save to pay back their pandemic debt. It could be they can't find anybody. It could be anything. Yeah.
You made a comment that it was a business downtown. Businesses downtown. Is there a bit of a back, like, can you break down the 35% of sole proprietorships? What type of business?
I have the data. I can look that up. I haven't looked it up. Yeah, I can find that out.
Yeah, it's a significant portion of the respondents, so.
But I see that a lot downtown now with.
Probably the ones most at need, which is why it'd be
Yeah.
interesting to know.
Yeah, and I anecdotally, I can tell you, I see that a lot with our clients. Now we have to, like, even yesterday, some of my staff had to come to Jasper to work with a client because they're the only employee in the business, and they have to serve their clients while we're coaching them. So we're seeing that more and more, that we have to come here to do that, because business owners can't leave their businesses. They have to leave them open. So I will look up and see how many are sole props, but I think we're going to find a lot of them are located in the downtown core.
Great, thank you. Just again, will help us to take the report and maximize the benefit that we can provide to individuals.
I think we may have exhausted questions, but I actually, one thing I'd like to ask is to be able to compare ourselves with the rest of the region. Would you be able to forward their study, theirs? Yeah, okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, Nancy, thank you very much for attending, and we really appreciate that information running into our strategic planning meetings.
Working with you on some of these opportunities. So,
Thank you. Mayor Allen.
Before Ms. Robbins leaves, I don't have another question, but you should be here for the formality. I'm happy to make a recommendation that committee receive the report presented by Ms. Robbins on behalf of Community Futures West Yellowhead for information.
Appreciate that. Councillors, anything? I'll call the question. All in favor? The motion carries. Once again, thank you. I'm going to take the opportunity to call a quick break before we move ahead. So we'll come back at 10:50. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We're moving on to item 6.1, correspondence. We have the correspondence from Jasper Senior Society. It's in short, it's requesting free passes for the aquatic and activity center to 75+ aged seniors. The letter is on the agenda. Councillors, would anybody like to speak to that? I would be looking for, Councillor Keller.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I think it's a good idea to consider, but I'd be interested to know how many seniors above 75 are members of the activity sector.
That's a question for administration. I know you may not have that information in front of you now, but Mr. Reed.
Thank you. Your deputy mayor through to Councillor Keller or MP. There are a dozen seniors members over the age of 75 and over. And there are also 29 Aquafit memberships that get sold throughout the year. But a dozen is the number that answers the direct question.
Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Through you to council, I would say that this matter was raised at the seniors community conversation earlier this month. And so I'm happy to see that through that venue, something sort of formal came to council rather than just a discussion among the participants. I think that's what we expect of our community conversations. So having now received this request, I am quite happy to make a motion that committee receive the correspondence as information and that committee refer the request from the Jasper Senior Society to administration for a report back to the next committee of the whole meeting. And that, excuse me, that report I would expect would include answers to the questions such as the number that might be involved and what the economic impact might be on our facilities and whatever else is relevant, but accept it as information and move it forward by referring the matter to administration for a report.
Great, thank you for that, Mayor Allen. So there's a motion on the floor. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Hall?
I have a couple comments and then also a question for administration. I reached out to councillors in Banff and Canmore to see what they do. Banff has an access program, it's tiered based on income. And then Canmore offers that to seniors 80 years old and up. I wonder, maybe this is a question for Dr. Reed, Have you had seniors coming to facilities that can't afford passes and requesting this? Is it been a barrier for anybody, do you know?
Deputy Mayor Wilson through to Councillor Hall, we do, of course, through our community outreach services have what you might consider as access pass for vulnerable members of our community. And yes, those passes do get accessed by seniors fairly regularly, I would say. So income being a barrier would not be a case as long as the resident, whatever the age of the resident, is accessing the community outreach services. Then we have the ability to meet the need of the vulnerable people in our community that way.
Well, that's good information. Thank you for that. Councillors? Anything further? Well, then I'll call Mayor Island's question. All in favor? There are none opposed. There are none opposed. That motion carries. Okay, moving on to item 7.1. That's 2022 debenture payment to reserve transfers. And I think Mrs. Melanchuk is here to speak to that one.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good morning to you and all of council. Yes, so today administration is coming to recommend that committee recommend council approve the following transfers of the 2022 budgeted debenture expense amounts to reserves as follows. There's an amount of $297,766 to the utility operating reserve, and then also a transfer of $337,617 that would go to the financial stabilization reserve. In December 2022, council approved the policy B112, which is the reserve policies, and within the structure of that, it states that for any reserve transaction that must be approved through the annual or capital budget, a carry forward project that was contained in an approved operating or capital budget or a council resolution. The approved 2022 budget proposed 3 new debentures that would be funding the wastewater treatment plant in the amount of $3 million, the water meters for the amount of $1 million, and also the activity center renovation in the amount of $4 million. These projects did not proceed as anticipated, and therefore the debentures were not taken. The wastewater treatment plant is proceeding and will occur in 2023. It was just a bit behind, and also this was due to supply demand. So there was some issues with that, but when we get into 2023, early 2023, we will have the need for this debenture. Therefore, it would offset the expenses that were put through in the 2023 budget. If we transfer the amount in 2022 to the reserve and then transfer it back out to offset those amounts in 2023. With the water meters, there was seemed to be a lot of movement with technology. Therefore, the Director of Operations has deemed that they would like to hold off and wait to see where the technology goes with this kind of system. So it has been placed in capital budget just as further down the line. And we're going to hold off on it right now. And then with the activity center renovation, as you know, is proceeding. It's lots of work going on here, and it will need this additional funding in 2023. There's this is the bulk of the work that will be completed during the year. So this would also be the transfer of debenture that wasn't really required in 2022, even though we thought we might need it then. to reserves then out in 2023 to offset the costs that we would incur taking out the debenture in 2023. And I believe that is all really that I need to summarize within the context of this request. The only other thing is that during the 2023 budget discussions, it was indicated that administration would come forward with this request of the reallocation of 2023 budget included. And it included the expectation that these funds would be withdrawn from the reserves to support the capital plan in 2023. If these transfers did not occur, it would impact the 2023 year-end financials significantly. And that is it. I am available for any questions. Thank you.
Councillors, Councillor Demoda.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Ms. Mountain. Appreciate you bringing this forward to us today. Just some questions on the transfer of the expenses and in regards to utilities and the CCC model. From my understanding, the meters as well as the wastewater treatment plant was part of the capital portion of the utilities requisition, I guess, how that works. How does that affect the utility rates going forward for 2023 if the money was already collected?
Deputy Mayor through to Councillor Demoda, as you saw in the utility bylaw being presented, there was no increases in those areas for 2023. Therefore, it basically goes in the expense of paying the principal and interest in 2022 does not occur. It goes into the reserve and then transfers out to offset the payments that will occur, or sorry, would not occur in 2023. So it assists in any kind of increases that water itself would have incurred in that year. So it assists those capital needs and offsets the expenses that would be normally levied to the client. So therefore it assists this year's client a little bit in the utility collections.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Councillors, any further questions? Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, through you potentially to Mrs. Melanchuk, because she referenced it, but maybe administration generally, and it's not really relevant to the request for decision. But I am really intrigued by the water meter comment and delaying an approved project because of potential changes in technology. And while I can understand that, I'm just wondering, and it looks like Mr. Given is going to respond, but what are the parameters that administration would use to enact such a policy? Because it must be ever present every time we have a need to purchase something. This is the first time it's come, I think, to council's attention that a project was delayed for this purpose. So I'm curious as to the parameters under which administration might govern such decisions or take these matters into consideration.
Deputy Mayor Wilson for Mayor Ireland, I will take that one because it is sort of outside of the finance area, but it really is, in this particular case, technology is proceeding and administration sees an opportunity to potentially incorporate this into a broader strategy of connected services within the municipality where we're leveraging technology in a number of different areas in operations and utilities department. And so we wanted to ensure that there was a more strategic approach rather than an ad hoc sort of piece by piece approach. I'm not sure this will be exactly the right analogy, but we didn't want to buy a Betamax machine when we might get VHS in the end. And so we wanted to ensure, it was really a matter of due diligence to say, if we're going to invest, and that was a significant capital project, Council, remember, it was over $800,000. if we're going to invest in this, we want to ensure that there's future interoperability between other systems that we might add. And so let's take a pause on this project and work with our teams, both in operations and utilities and information technology, to develop an IT master plan to ensure that we have the systems in place to be able to support those types of investments in technology. So in terms of a process, that's the why on that particular project. And it really is that administrative evaluation about effectiveness of any proposed project. And if we see that a project that has been proposed by us to council and approved by council, as we get closer towards implementation, if we start to have questions about the utility of that project or about the sort of long-term viability of that project, or start to have questions, council and the community should know that we won't just plow ahead and say, well, we've got the money, let's spend it. We will hold and say, you know what, if we're going to be doing something, let's ensure that we're doing that wisely. And that's what happened in this case.
I appreciate that. The larger question I might have is whether that approach ought to be somehow standardized, so that this appears to be a bit of a one-off. At least it's the first time that's come to our attention. Doesn't mean it's the first time somebody has exercised that sort of forethought. But under, say, a procurement policy or any other existing policy, I wonder whether it would be prudent to consider administrative procedures that encapsulate this very process, so that it would become standard procedure for administration to consider sort of the downstream effects of any purchase and take into account changing technology. I mean, I'm not critical of anybody having done this. It's probably a good idea, but because it's a good idea, should we make it part of our overall practice?
Deputy Mayor Wilson for Mayor Ireland. I think that this is not so much procurement as it is information technology. So we were dealing with an item in the utilities area, which, you know, if I was to oversimplify, traditionally has been valves and mechanical things, and the pace of change has not been particularly rapid. There's a significant amount of technology in the utilities area today that there didn't used to be. And there is increasing overlap between the utilities area and information technology, sort of the computers and the computer systems and the information networks that we have across the municipality, our network infrastructure that didn't used to exist. So I think this is actually, rather than purchasing policy, I think it connects more directly to information technology strategy to say, what is our approach to ensuring that we have the right infrastructure in place to be able to host a variety of different municipal services on our network, so to speak. Again, just to oversimplify. Administration does have in the budget money for information technology master plan, because and again, I think sort of as a result of this question about the water meters, hey, this is a thing that maybe in the past might not have been seen as an IT project, but really it is. And so are the printers in the activity center, and so is, and that sort of gives that pause. So we need to, rather than a purchasing practice, we need an information technology guided document that we would be able to apply in any future RFPs or capital projects to be able to say, this project X in 2025 must conform or support or interoperate with the municipality's IT master plan. And we pretty regularly have those kind of requirements in our purchasing practices. So when we put out an RFP, we put down our scope of work and our expectations of any vendors that would respond. And I expect that our IT infrastructure would start to be incorporated that same way.
Councillor, do you want to?
Thank you. Just to clarify further, there's a better integration opportunity that's in the midst. Okay, thank you.
Council, is there anything further? Councillor Melnick?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson, to you, to Mr. Given. I appreciate the mayor asking the question, because that actually caught my attention as well about what technology changes could there possibly be in a water meter that's probably been in existence for the better part of 40 years. A sort of time frame on when that might be, because I want to know what to do with my Betamax as well. I hope it's a take it or leave it event, but you know, we have this project. We have this project that seriously, I haven't made a we have this project that it should be done in a certain time frame. So I'm just wondering what that time frame might be: 3 months, 6 months, 9 months.
Deputy Mayor Wilson, Councillor Malik, I don't have that information, and this I think talk to Director Greathead and just see what the utilities department plan on reevaluating that was. It does have an operational impact because right now there are a number of meters that we need to read manually. The intent was to be able to move to remote readings, which would reduce labor costs. But so it's still something we're interested in, and I can get more information from Director Greathead.
Thank you for that.
All right, councillors, I'd be looking for a motion. No motions? Oh, Councillor Waxer.
That committee recommend council approve the following transfers of 2022 budgeted debenture expense funds to reserves as follows. $297,766 to the utility operating reserve and $337,617 to the financial stabilization reserve.
Thank you for that, Councillor Waxer. Anything further, councillors? All question, all in favor? Or not opposed, that motion carries. Moving on to item 7.2, 2022 property tax receivable write-off request. Mr. Given.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Director Malnish,
Thank you, Mr. Given. Today, Administration Council is bringing forward a recommendation that Committee of the Whole recommend Council to direct administration to write off property taxes receivable for roll 500,000, which is a provincial building downtown, for half of the amount levied in the amount of $29,161.84. This is something that council has been seeing regularly since 2019. In 2019, they indicated that they would only be paying 75% or sorry, 75% of their taxes levied. And then going forward that they would only be paying 50% of the amounts levied. In the past, council has directed administration to write off the amounts. You can see the amounts for 2020, 2021, and then the amount for 2022. So this has been deemed as property tax receivable that will be uncollectible because municipalities are created under provincial legislation and have no mechanism to collect unpaid amounts from the government of Alberta. For the purposes of the annual audit, administration must recommend that council authorize the write-off of these uncollectible amounts. If there are any questions, I am available. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And just a question, last year, and I think years prior, we had requested that the mayor send a letter to our MLA in that regard. Is that true? Yeah. Would we want to be doing the same thing just to keep with tradition? Councillor Demota.
Well, I'm just wondering if we had the ability to develop some sort of Jasper Sovereignty Act so we can use our own tools to, make up for this lost revenue somewhere else. I thought if we're not going to get the help, then provincial government's actually working against our endeavors, then we gotta figure out a more creative way. Anyway, just a thought for conversation. I'm not saying that I want to lead with that anywhere, but you know, it seems to be done in other levels of government, so. It's worth the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks for the suggestion, Councillor Waxer.
Yeah, I just wondered whether there is any lobbying happening at Alberta municipalities around this issue, and I don't recall it from the last conference, but I was curious if there's any significant momentum in the rest of the province.
Deputy Mayor Wilson for Councillor Waxer. So I would say that the position of municipalities across the province is the same. Everybody thinks that this is patently unfair, unreasonable, and ill-considered on behalf of the province. Alberta municipalities has done a significant amount of lobbying in the past, and I think that that's died down because the answer has been very consistent from the current government, which has basically been, no, this is what we're doing, go pound sand. And so I think I would say that no, there's not really any active lobbying because AD Munis and RMA, for that matter, have taken up this issue multiple times with the government to the same unresponsive sort of answer. This is just how it is. A provincial election, a change of government, a new government of the same party, any of those would offer opportunities to sort of reignite this issue. And so my suggestion would be continue to follow past practice. I think it doesn't hurt or harm anything to say, hey, government of Alberta, here's your free ride and the $29,000 that the residents of the municipality of Jasper picked up on your behalf. And let them know that, but I wouldn't expect any change in policy, especially at this late stage in the provincial government term.
So thank you. Councillors? A motion maybe? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. I would make that motion that we recommend council to direct administration to write off the property tax receivable for rural 500,000 provincial building on for half of the amount levied in the amount of 29,161.84, and that following past practices, we also send a letter to either the Minister of Rural Affairs or to the Provincial Treasury, just expressing our displeasure and hopefully reconsideration in the new budget year, which would start on April 1st, to perhaps not follow this policy in the future.
Thanks for that, councillors. You understand Councillor Melnick's motion? Anything further? Marla?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Just to speak briefly to the motion, and I won't recite my lengthy tilt rant that I have voiced on previous years. I support the motion primarily because it saves work for our already overburdened staff. They can't just carry on the debt forever. So it clears the books for them, and that's significant. We would have spent as council perhaps an hour or more dealing with $30,000 grant applications and other items on our agenda. It is not a huge amount in the overall context, but it is important. But more importantly, from my perspective, as a voice of disrespect from province to municipalities, it is deafening. And even though, as Mr. Kevin said, Alberta Munis and RMA have been told to pound sand, I have no hesitation writing again, expressing our displeasure. This is a government that purported to act on a fair deal for Alberta and refuses to give a fair deal to Alberta municipalities. And I'm happy to continue to tell them so.
Thank you for that. Councillor Boxer.
So my other comment is following up on what Ms. Robbins said this morning. I wondered whether we should include that, the information that this, on our website, where does your tax dollar go? Perhaps it could include information that, the municipality has to subsidize the provincial government.
Thank you for that. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And there are none opposed. Motion carries. Okay, the walk-on item 7.3 tourism-based communities, costs and fiscal capacity report. Mr. Given.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Wilson. And again, council, apologies for the today delivery, the hard copy delivery of this item, rather than it being a Friday package. But in consultation with the mayor, administration saw that it was worthwhile to bring this forward to be able to support some of the municipalities' advocacy efforts and to ensure that this information is now available in the public sphere. So in the late 2010s, council may be aware that the municipality partnered with others across the province to engage a consultant, Ben Brunin, to commission a report to present a definition of tourism-based communities and to propose recommendations on how those communities can be supported in serving the visitors that they see. You'll often hear that report called the Brunin Report. In late 2022, the CAOs of Jasper, Banff, and Canmore engaged that same consultant, Ben Brunin, under his new firm to conduct a new analysis to look a little bit more closely at what the incremental costs are for our three communities in terms of providing services to visitors. So we wanted to understand, okay, so we understand that we are a visitor-based community. We solved that issue back in the late 2010s. Now, what are the actual costs of being a visitor-based community or tourism-based community? And so we invited Ben to develop the report that's attached to the package today. And again, as I mentioned, will be a part of the public record and has already been emailed out to the So I'll reference that as the 2022 report. And with the full name is the Tourism-Based Communities Cost and Fiscal Capacity Report. So while we have sort of long understood at a high level that we face unusual costs as a result of our visitor-focused economy, and that Jasper specifically has some unique limitations because of our location within a national park, we haven't ever really clearly quantified what exactly those costs are. So the 2022 report actually contrasted the three communities, Jasper, Banff, and Canmore, with 33 other Alberta towns that have comparable populations, service, size of infrastructure. And the major finding in the report is that our three communities do in fact have above average spending in categories that are directly related to supporting the visitor economy. Moreover, as a result of our visitor-focused spending, Jasper, Banff, and Canmore have the highest per capita expenditures of the comparator communities. So our three communities out of the 33 comparators across the province spend the most per person in providing services, which is not, I think, typically something that you would hear a CAO raising in a public forum, except for the fact that we can clearly identify why our spending is higher than others. And it isn't because of inefficiency. It is directly related to visitor-focused services. In the report, these key functions include public transit, bylaw enforcement, waste management, fire, public housing, and wastewater treatment and disposal, which I think are all topics the council is aware of from our budget processes about just how big an impact they have on our Jasper budget. In the report, you'll see a table that is pulled from, in the RFD, you'll see a table that's pulled from the report that highlights three communities' per capita expenditures in those visitor-focused categories. And you can see that in many areas, we rank near the top of spending out of 33 municipalities. So all these numbers where you see a rank number is compared to the 33 different municipalities where Banff, Jasper, and Canmore sort of rank. And so, for example, I'll draw your attention to fire. Out of the 33 different municipalities, Jasper spends the most per person on fire service. Wastewater treatment and disposal is another area where out of the 33 communities, Jasper spends the most on wastewater treatment and disposal. Family and community support services and parks and recreation are others where Jasper is the very top list. And you can see that there's a strong correlation in many of those services with BAF, wastewater treatment and disposal, BAF being second highest in terms of the spending there. And as council well knows, we need to have a wastewater and water system that is not built for 5,000 population as it would be in any of the other 30 communities that were sort of generic in nature. It needs to be built to support our 2.5 million visitors a year. And so that's a clear indication where we have increased incremental spending compared to some other Alberta municipality. And you can see its direct impact on our total expenditures. You'll also, one note that I think is worth highlighting. In the table, you'll see that Jasper's ranked around public transit and public housing operations. Those are two areas where Banff and Canmore rank very high out of the 33 municipalities, and we're quite a bit lower. I'll just make a note for council that this does not reflect your 2023 budget. These are based on 2021 numbers. 2023 budget, obviously, council invested significantly in housing, and there are some planned investments for public transportation. We set up the reserve and made a contribution to the reserve, and are likely to see some more investments in public transit. I would expect that Jasper's place in those rankings will increase from where we are sort of 6th place out of 33 municipalities and 10th place out of 33 municipalities. We'll start to see us creeping up the list, which means that we'll start to spend more than other comparable municipalities in those categories over the coming years. And as we heard from the report from Community Futures, there's obviously great community demand for housing. And so there's obviously a direct correlation between that demand from the community, the needs of businesses that are supporting the visitor-based economy, and council's decision to invest in public. And I want to sort of throw that caution. I feel a bit awkward as a municipal administrator saying that we spend more than most others in the province. It's not an enviable position. But again, this is directly related to the services that are in demand from our business community and from our residents, and really directly related to that visitor economy. So some of the other major findings directly related to Jasper from the report, our community spends approximately $6.5 million, or 32% of our expenditures, to support visitors. So those categories that are visitor focused make up 32% of our expenditures. Jasper does have the second lowest residential property taxes per capita and the lowest residential property taxes on a per dwelling basis. We're followed very closely by Banff, which I believe is second in both those categories. And there are tables in the larger report that will show you the distribution where our residential property taxes fall compared to the other 33 municipalities. Jasper has the second highest non-residential property taxes. Guess who the highest was out of those 33. It's our southern neighbor, Banff. But again, a direct correlation, I think, between where those two municipalities have very limited growth and limited tax base, and so have been putting significant amount of weight on the non-residential tax base, and it is there in the report. So while there's this disparity in having, being the lowest on the residential property tax base and the highest on the non-residential, even if Jasper chose strategically to target an average residential property tax rate, which by the way is what Canmore does. They actually by policy set their residential property tax rate at the average of their comparative municipalities. So in the report, you'll see the rate in the middle, and that's not an accident. It's as a result of a council policy. But even if Jasper was to target that same sort of place as Canmore, it would generate approximately an additional 1.1 million in revenue, which would be beneficial. But as noted before, we spend an additional 6.5 million to support the visitor economy, on services to support the visitor economy. So even increasing residential property tax rates would not make up the gap between the increased costs that we face and the needs of visitors. So as I mentioned, Jasper has about 32% of our expenditures focused on visitors. BAMP is higher at 43% of their expenditures focused on supporting visitors, and Canmore slightly lower at 26%. But all three communities spend substantially more of their budgets focused on their largest economic sector, which is visitors. And together, this really indicates that there is a need for recognition of this unique circumstance of being a tourism-based economy. And as council has been doing, you should likely continue to advocate for increased recognition of this circumstance at the provincial and federal levels, particularly at the provincial level, as Mayor Ireland has been doing the last while in collaboration with mayors of Banff and Canmore. Deputy Mayor Wilson, as I was going through strategic relevance, I stopped putting points of the council strategic plan that attached to this recommendation, because it was basically all of them. I could have made a case for just about all of them, but you can see that increased recognition of this issue and discussion of this issue really do impact broad swaths of council's strategic focus in your plan. And the information presented today is for your information and for the community's information. And administration is recommending that you receive the report for information first, so it's part of public record. And secondly, that you make copies of the report available, and we've come up with a bit of a starting list of the FP Soroka, FP MLA Long, Tourism Jasper, and the Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce. Council may wish to identify other organizations or that might wish to have this information. And if you do that in the motion, administration will ensure that a copy of the report. Deputy Mayor Olson, that's all we had to check.
Excellent. Thank you for that. A lot to observe. Councillors, would you like to speak to this at this point? Mayor Ireland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Just to continue on the theme presented by Mr. Gibbon, this material was prepared again by Mr. Brunin, now through a different firm, but many of you will be able to recall the original Brennan report that was commissioned by tourism-based communities many years ago, and this builds on that. It is important, I think, to recognize that the graph in particular that Mr. Gibbon was referencing relates to budget expenditures and not necessarily to tax allocation. So, for example, our family and community support expenditure is top. It doesn't have much of an effect on our tax rate because so much of that is funded otherwise, but it does speak to the challenges of operating in a visitor economy and the stress that that puts on the workforce. And it's important that we have those supports. It's critical, in fact, and it's recognized in this report that we spend a lot that way. As Mr. Gibbon said, of course, the assessment base that is commensurate with a population of about 5,000 has to deal with peak demand from 25,000 tourists and the waste that they produce, and so our costs really are high. And for public housing, it is phenomenal that under previous budgets, and as Mr. Gibbon said, this doesn't reflect the current situation. Even at $2 spending per capita, we were 10. We're going to catapult up the list as we focus more on public housing and also on public transit, both of which are required for the nature of our community and the nature of our visitor economy. So this information presents itself today for a number of reasons, but in particular, I was anxious to get it before you because it is information that we are sharing with the minister, and later today, Mr. Gibbon and I will be on a call with the Minister of Municipal Affairs, with mayors and CEOs from Banff and Canmore, and we will be using some of the information from this report to help make our case for designation of tourism-based communities and program funding. So as you see, we have a shortfall of $6.5 million in this community, just dealing directly with visitor-facing services and infrastructure. It is significant. Oh, and the one other thing I wanted to point out, Parks and Recreation, where again, we are number one. It's important to recognize that our facilities drive visitation. Tournaments are great for this town. Business sees a real benefit, but it's coming at municipal expense. Something that we have undertaken to do because we understand our commitment to help the business sector, particularly in the shoulder seasons. So yes, the spending is high, but it drives visitation and therefore keeps the economy of our business sector operating. So all very important considerations, but I'm happy that the report is here, and I am pleased to make the motion that the committee receive the report as information and circulate indicated.
Great, thank you for that motion. Councillors, Councillor DeBona.
Yeah, great, and I'm gonna support that because I think it's great, and you know, just touching on the latter part of what the mayor just iterated. You know, we need to build champions in our community, we need to build champions in our region and our province, and as well as in the communities that are like ours. But conversely, I'm just going back to a conversation I had at AUMA in the fall with the not yet Minister of Jobs, Economy and Northern Development. Mr. Jean was talking while we're having a conversation about the impact on his community in Fort McMurray with commuters coming in, flying in, and not paying taxes in their community, but working and putting a lot of burden on their infrastructure. It's something they get to fly out at the end of the day or the end of the week and stuff like that, and not really live there, but their activity was putting an impact on their municipal services. So of course I was nodding my head and said, well, we have a similar situation. And he saw right away a connection there. So I said to him on the side, it's not like Banff, Jasper and Canmore, you know, are a feather in the province's cap for tourism. But you know, sharing those similar scenarios, like, you can have a champion in us. You know, if you understand our plight at your level, if you ever get a ministry or something like that, and he says it's a good thing to consider. So I think we can find champions in other areas within the province too, that we can lean on that have similar things. And just because we have our own thing with tourism doesn't mean that other areas in Alberta, other municipalities and regions would have access to tools. So we don't have to just have tools just for ourselves, but this could open up the opportunity for other communities as well. And then thus getting more of a champion building support for our cause. And I think this would be a good thing to start with for our province. Just a couple of comments, thanks.
Thank you for that. Anything further, councillors? Not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to item 8, motion action list. Is there for information? Stephen, you going to speak to it at all?
No, there's, I think, just one item that we're recommending removing. At the bottom of the first page, you'll see the solid waste recycling charges out of November 29th. Council will brought the utility waste fees bylaw forward, and that included the installation of a commercial recycling card. We felt address this issue, and so we're recommending that.
Great, thank you for that. No recommendation needed.
Deputy Mayor Wilson, I think we were just moving committee approve the updated motion actions.
Thank you for that. May I have that motion from Councillor Calderon? Thank you. All in favor? Carries, thank you. Item 9, start off with council appointments to boards and committees. Any updates there, councillors? Councillor Calderon.
Last Thursday, I attended the seniors dinner at Alpine Summit with the families. It was a very nice evening. And on Friday, I attended the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway Association meeting. We're looking at our priorities going forward. So we will be putting together some questionnaires for each municipality. So administration will receive something probably in the next 6 weeks, and it will come to council for our input.
Thank you for that. Councillors, anything further? Councillor Melnick?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. In the time since we've been together last, I did attend an initial meeting where the business recovery report that we received today was first presented to the chamber and to Jeanette Marcoux with the in attendance were 2 provincial government officials as well, who were involved with the report. So this is today was the 3rd opportunity to see this report as Councillor Demoda and myself, as well as Kathleen, Councillor Waxer, attended the Community Futures monthly meeting where the report was formally presented to all of the participants. And the last opportunity to report on is the arts and culture community conversation. We had a brief meeting. One of the things that came up is the community dinners are now attracting close to 500 people. Initially, we were looking at, I believe that community development was looking at about 250 people. These dinners are being really well attended, and they're experiencing a bit of a concern with volunteers, especially to make sure that we can turn over the room at each dinner. And so they'll be looking for volunteers who would attend every dinner if possible, work as either busters or in the dish pit, because these dinners are once again very, very popular.
Okay, call those out. Thank you. Any further? Councillor Demoda?
Well, I look forward to our strategic plan review coming forward, and I'm glad that Councillor Melnick already addressed some of the stuff. Already spoke to the community conversation when Ms. Robbins was here, and a lot of what we had at our Community Futures West Yellowhead past meeting was covered today. So not a lot. I do want to say that I was part of that WSET wine course that was hosted here in the community, and well attended. I think that there is a waiting list for that particular session again of 35, where 24 spots are available. So I could see that continually being a program that could be offered here in Jasper. And one thing that I want to do, and maybe it's not at our level, but I would like to see where the community and with our help in other areas can support more initiatives like this, because I think that particular center itself provides really good access and ability to host other things like that. We do have other spots in the community, and I think if we don't have a community college close by or other services like that, we should start maybe advocating for more of that in our community, because I find it very helpful. And you know, I don't think I'm smarter than anybody, but I'm smarter than I was last week, so I'm quite happy to help promote that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waxer.
Yes, yesterday I attended the twinning committee, and we're making some significant progress on conference planning for May. And so that's positive.
Marion?
Just in terms of upcoming meetings, it's a bit repetitive because I referenced it, dealing with the updated Bruin report, but just to acquaint councillors again with ongoing issues. The mayors and CAOs, together with our consultants, New West Public Affairs, meet weekly to discuss our initiative and strategize regarding the initiative to get provincial designation for tourism-based communities and program funding. And as I indicated, we have a meeting later today with Minister of Municipal Affairs, Rebecca Schultz. We met with her previously in December. We made a budget submission to the province for consideration as they develop the 2023 budget. And we have been invited back by the Minister of Municipal Affairs for further discussions this afternoon. So I hope is a positive sign. And as I indicated earlier, some of the information that we have shared and will be emphasizing is in the report that was received for information earlier today. In a week or so, and maybe after the provincial budget comes out, we will know the level of our success.
Great, thank you for all that hard work. Councillors?
You sound so sincere.
Okay, we'll be moving on then to upcoming, item 9.2, which was added by Councillor Hall, elected official education course. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. On Friday, I received an email from the registrar for the elective official education program, and there's an upcoming corporate planning and finance course being offered. It's Zoom, so I'd be able to do it from Jasper over 4 weeks. And I'd like to register for it.
Great, councillors. Would we need a motion then for her to attend that course, or is it?
I think we do. I'm prepared to make a motion that committee approve the attendance of Councillor Hall at the elected officials educational course as described by Councillor Hall. I can't remember what you said it was, budgeting and
Corporate planning and
corporate planning.
Great, thank you for that motion. Councillor Demona.
I took that one last year, wrapped up in April. I find it very worthwhile and helpful, and any courses that come available, and we should try to collectively take advantage of, whether we're working towards a certificate or not. I think they're quite worthwhile, and they're only a couple hours once a week.
Great, thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? They're not opposed, and motion carries. Upcoming events, item 10. Jasper in January is occurring currently from the 13th to the 29th. Lots of events out there. Get on the Jasper in January web site to find out what you can attend. NETMA's January 25th from 5 to 7 at the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge. Council has a strategic plan review commencing immediately. We're heading up to Belmont for that. And then I just wanted to add, FCM is coming up May 25th through 28th. Registration is starting. I'm not sure if Emma has been after that, and maybe it's a conversation we should probably have, because I think starting February 1st, it's hotel bookings and yeah. So conversation, anybody planning on attending? I am. Thoughts? Councillor Calvin-Ampey? Why don't we go around the table and see, and maybe if you're not sure just yet, but say again.
Deputy Mayor Wilson, this is something that we could also probably take offline.
Yeah, okay.
And
I just wanted to bring it to the attention, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So the administration will look at that on the inside, and then we can kind of discuss the approach to who's going to attend and also the cycle for this council term. So that there's a council policy that directs a little bit of how this happens.
Right on. May 25th through 28th. In Toronto. Okay, any other upcoming events to add, councillors? Councillor Waxer?
Yes, just the coldest night of the year walk on February 25th.
Excellent. And if there is nothing further, I would welcome a motion to adjourn from Councillor Demota. We'll adjourn at 10 to 12. I was about to. I'll call the question. All in favor? There are none opposed.
Was that a motion from the chair?
Thanks, Papa.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for attending virtually and those that attended in person. Appreciate your interest. Thank you.